I know it's your favorite paper pack, but you can always keep your favorite papers in the paper pad and put the others in your single sheet collection. That's your favorite paper pad. You're never going to break the seal on that baby. Pulling apart your paper pads will help you find things a lot easier. Go ahead, tear it apart. You'll never remember what goes together anyway. If you keep your pads together, everything is in one place. No hunting for matching papers. Pads are designed to match. They're developed to stay together. You keep them as a collection and keep it intact, you'll be able to make beautiful pages with coordinating colors. So let's start with the pros versus the cons about keeping the paper pads together. So some of the pros include definitely coordinating designs. Pads are designed to match and making it easy for fast page making or card making. They can be a quick grab and go. There's no hunting for matching papers. Everything is in one place. It also keeps the collection intact. That way you don't forget what belongs together, especially with themed or designer collections. There's also less decision fatigue. Sometimes if you have too much choice, it's hard for you to make a decision. So keeping a paper pad intact helps you decide on papers because not only do they match and coordinate, but you can make a quick decision and thusly make faster pages. So a lot of times when the paper pad is large, you don't really use all of it because you kind of get tired of it. There are things in it that you don't like. So if you keep it together, sometimes it's easier to sell that way as well or donate. Kind of gives it more of a value. If you decide to destash, whole pads are easier to share. So now the cons. Paper pads are very bulky to store. These are heavy. They're very heavy. And the more pages that you have in them, the heavier they are. So you also have to pay attention to where you're storing them. You can't put them on a top shelf. You have to put them low to the ground, which for me, it's hard for me to get on the floor or get down low. Pads tend to take up more space, especially if you hoard, collect lots of them. Another con about a paper pad is that hidden gems can get lost. Some papers you love might get forgotten because they're buried in the pad and you don't actually go to it stuck in a paper pad. There's also something that's called pad paralysis. Now, I have been affected by this, not so much anymore, but in the beginning. All of us crafters know when we find something we love and it's so pretty, we hesitate to break the seal and use a pad just because we don't want to ruin the set or we don't want to take anything away from the set because the set is so beautifully coordinated. We don't want to ruin that. So then we end up not using it. And last con that I have, keeping the paper pads together, is you get limited by not being able to mix things between paper pads that might coordinate beautifully and give you the perfect combination of paper, texture, print for your layout. So you're going to miss a lot, be limited by keeping your paper pads together. Now, with all that said, tearing apart your paper pads can cause some good days and some bad days as well. So let's talk about the good things. One thing that I've noticed about tearing paper pads down is that I have better access to my favorites. We all have paper pads where we like some of the papers, but not all of them. So I have noticed that tearing paper pads apart gives me better access to the papers that I love. So as an example, let me show you in this paper pad, If I kept this paper pad together, I probably wouldn't find these houses down here that I could fussy cut and use as a border for a trip that we took to Bergen, where the buildings looked just like these colored buildings, because I would never think to look for it in this Vicky Bouton pad of paper. So if I have it pulled apart, I would find these houses more quickly and in my paper categories. Now, with your paper categories, that brings us to the next pro of tearing your paper pads apart, which is custom organization. Tearing your paper pads apart means you can sort your papers by color, theme, mood, pattern, or any kind of category that you scrapbook a lot to make your mixing of your papers a lot easier. For example, these are all papers that came from paper pads that I pulled apart. So now I have a lot more paper in my script, a lot more in my purple, my turquoise flora, my green, my geometric yellow. There's all my paper categories have more paper in them now, so that I'm more apt to use them because I'll go to a paper category and won't miss anything. Pull it, if you're using it out of the paper pad and you end up with scraps, what are you going to do with the scrap? Tearing it apart means that you can put it in with your other scraps, or if you keep your scraps in your categories, you can do that rather than trying to slip them in the front of a paper pad and have them fall out. I also think that tearing your paper pads apart encourages your creativity because it teaches you how to be able to mix and match across different pads. And because we're so used to our stash, sometimes tearing a new paper pad apart and adding it into our stash helps bring our stash to life and makes for fresh and sometimes more eclectic layouts. And as with anything, there's always the bad side. Now, again, we talked about earlier about the set, that if you tear this apart, you're more than likely going to lose the set. And you may forget what papers were meant to go together. Although if you have a vast amount of paper like most of us do, chances are likely you're going to find something that will match the paper that's not in the paper pad. Also, once you tear these paper pads apart, sometimes you can get some organization overload. Sorting and storing loose paper can get overwhelming, and I'm telling you, time consuming. Also, tearing apart your paper pads can make it harder to follow tutorials. So if, for instance, you're watching a video about a certain collection or a certain paper pad, and they matching this polka dot orange paper with this turquoise script paper, and they're meshing it, now that you've torn your paper pad apart, you're not going to be able to find it. Now, some of that's a little bit of anal retentiveness, which I had to get over and cure myself of that, because it doesn't have to be this turquoise script paper. It can be any turquoise script paper. It doesn't have to be this orange polka dot. It can be any orange polka dot. So keep that in mind. Now that I've thoroughly confused you, let's talk about the possible middle ground. You can always take a paper pad and do a partial pad pull. That just means that you're going to pull apart some of the papers and keep some of them in the pad. You could tear out a few sheets you know you won't use, like your ugly papers, one-page layout person. You can tear out a duplicate and keep the others together in the paper pad. You can also tear down a paper pad, and as you tear it down, you can make page kits. That's where you break the pad down by pre-matching sheets into page kits or card kits if you're a card maker. So in other words, this could be a starter page. So you could pull this one apart. That would go nice with it. And maybe you want a gingham. So maybe this turquoise gingham. So those 3 pieces of paper you would pull out of the paper pad, stick them together in a bag by themselves, and that's a page kit. and then you could keep the rest together. Another way to remember which papers go together is by digitally cataloging your pads. So you could take photos of the full pads. I like to actually keep this. That's why this is apart. And these are on here because the stickiness is still there from the seal. But I like to actually take a picture of this so that I kind of remember, oh, those big sunflowers. Yeah, I want to use those. So I will go to my flora category. Or, ooh, that plaid would go really nice with these pumpkins. So this would be in my seasons category. This will be in my plaid category. So I could actually find those papers. So you can take the front of these paper pads and actually catalog these either into a binder or just take a picture of it. You can print a picture of this and keep it in a 6x6 picture photo albums. So let me tell you about my system that I use with my paper pads. And this is something that I have developed over 20 plus years of scrapbooking. So you don't have to adopt all of this at once. You can take some of this and implement it, try it out. If you don't like it, you can always go back. There is no rhyme or reason to organizing except for that you make it work for your process. So I kept all my kits together, all my paper pads together, all my collections together, but I also had single papers in color or rainbow and some themed categories. Now this year, I was really starting to pay attention to my process and how I scrapbook. And I realized that I always went to my single sheet papers first because I didn't want to look through all my pads to find something. I just felt like that I was going to have to sit there and pile through all my paper pads just to find a piece of paper. That's when I realized that both camps of thought were making sense to me. So I had to make and set my own criteria for tearing down a paper pad. Here are the 3 things that I look for when I'm deciding what I'm going to do with a paper pad. Number 1 is if the paper pad has double-sided papers, it's staying together. And I have a love-hate relationship with double-sided paper because I tend to not dislike any piece of paper. I tend to not say, oh, that's ugly. Ooh, I don't like that. I hardly ever say that. I can always find a use for paper. So I have a really hard time deciding, do I like this side or do I like this side? It's really difficult. So what I do with double-sided paper is I flip the 6. What does that mean? So this paper is the same as this paper. So what I like to do is I like to cut the paper in half and then I flip the 6. I could put this in the middle and flank them with the other side. So this is why I keep my double-sided paper together so that I can flip the 6. The second tip is that I have is if it is considered a collection, I tend to keep it together. So this is what a collection looks like. This is not a paper pad, and I'm sorry for the glare. I think it's got a definite sticker sheet that matches all the papers. Here's the papers, and then I actually have some ephemera to go with it. So I keep all of this together because it definitely starts out as being interdependent, and I want to use this until I've used it up. Then I will take the rest of the papers and put them into my categories. So collections I always keep together as well. The third criteria for keeping things together is when there is a strong style and if the papers are interdependent. Something like this Heartfelt Creations classic sunflower, it does say collection, but it is just a paper pad. But if you can see, there is definitely a strong style here. And the papers do pretty much depend on each other. So it would be difficult for me to find something in my stash to match the style of this Maybe not the colors, but definitely the style. We're definitely going to keep this together. So those are my criteria for keeping something together. Strong style or theme. They are considered a kit or collection. And then, let's see. Oh, yeah, double-sided. So as far as tearing a paper pad apart, number one thing that I try to do mostly is when I'm buying paper pads, I generally purchase generic or general papers. I don't tend to buy icon paper. The whole page is full of donuts, or the whole page is full of geotags, or the whole page is full of animals or something like that. It's easier for me to tear apart my paper pads because the papers don't depend on one another. I have plenty of stuff in my stash to match up what's in the paper pads. So tearing apart a paper pad, number one, not double-sided. So it's almost opposite of keeping it together, right? Do the papers that are in here individually fit into my paper categories? And I can tell that right away as soon as I'm flipping through. That's definitely would be a stripe, even though it's geometric, there's a definite stripe, and within the stripes, it's stripes. So I would put that in striped, okay, in stripes. These would be put in cut apart. So this would definitely go in a multicolor striped paper, watercolor. So you can see, you can tell that it's single-sided. Plus, all of these papers that are in here, they don't depend on one another whatsoever. I can easily find papers to match these papers individually, and also they all fit into my categories. So as far as tearing apart a paper pad, single-sided, that the papers do not depend on one another, and the papers individually fit into my specific categories. So those are the criteria for tearing down a paper pad for me. There is no right, there is no wrong for you. You get to decide how to do it, and you get to decide how to organize it. There is nothing wrong with having some of each. Now, I gravitate more towards tearing paper pads apart. I'm telling you, as soon as you tearing apart a paper pad is so freeing. But I definitely have reasons for not tearing them apart, and you can do both. So I hope this helped you make some decisions about your paper pads. So I want you to find at least one paper pad. This is my challenge to you. Find one paper pad using my criteria and tear that puppy apart and put it into your single sheet paper categories. I guarantee you it's freeing. I know that you'll use it better and faster, and you won't be so worried about keeping it together as a set. I hope that you found this video helpful. If you did, please click on the thumbs up right below the screen here. It helps me with grow my YouTube channel, and it also helps other people find this content. Also, if you wouldn't mind, click the subscribe button. That way you know when my new content comes out, and you can keep up with all my ideas for scrapping your stash. So if you want to know what my paper categories are, you're going to want to watch the next video in the series. So for now, this has been Scrapping the Stash with Gail. I'm Gail, and we'll see you in the next video. Bye-bye.